Kristian, Bodyslam Pro Wrestling. How are you? Thank you for joining us.
I am great. I just had a tall glass of water. I am hydrated. I am ready. I am excited to be here on Ringsiders podcast.
No, thank you for coming on. Recently, we've had the chance to speak to, well, maybe a couple last year from the Scandinavian wrestling scene. Endakara was one of them, and he really opened my eyes to, there really is a wrestling scene over there, because I was quite unfamiliar with it myself. And then I saw Bodyslam on social media more and more, and I was like, this looks really cool. And we've been really looking forward to speaking with you, because it seems like the Scandinavian wrestling scene is kind of doing like the British wrestling scene did a few years ago. You've got some really good talent, some good promotions popping up, and it seems like it's really becoming a strong wrestling scene.
Well, I mean, first of all, thank you, because that's a lot of this is a matter of just it's been brewing for a while, so it is a matter of, I think, of opening eyes, like you say Endakara did. There's some people that had their eyes opened when we were in Germany just this past March for 16 Carat weekend.
Yeah,
and a lot of it is and I understand, because it's a weird, like Scandinavia is a weird place for wrestling to begin with. Like, it's just, it doesn't fit in with the social democracy and the beautiful blonde people in Sweden and all that. It's I mean, I guess maybe it fits in with the Viking theme, though. Now that I think
yeah, sure.
But it's I feel like that's probably what you said is probably the best compliment that you could pay to where we are right now, because so much of the British wrestling boom that happened maybe 10 years ago or so was carried by promotions that dared to use the local talent. It wasn't carried by imports, which used to be sort of, you could always, once or twice a year, if you bring in a Legends thing or whatever, then you got a gate, and then that's fine. But to have the sustainability of it, then you need the local talent. That's something that I'm always very very open about, is we want as much influence from the UK, from Germany, from the more established wrestling scenes.
Yeah.
But it is about building the local talent. It is about showcasing the local talent, and it's about giving them more opportunities to wrestle, even on just wrestle on a show, but also to learn from more experienced people, because a lot of it just grew out of like backyarding stuff, right? Like self-trained wrestlers that just, and then some people went abroad and got trained. Like, I know you mentioned Endakara. I know he went to where was it, Birmingham, I think, to train for a while. He's been to Germany to train. We've had a few guys that went to Germany as well. Emeritus, who trains people at our school, originally in 2008, went to Detroit to train at the House of Truth, if you know Truth Martini, who was in Ring of Honor for a while. And he brought that, he went over there, slept on a couch for however many months, and sort of brought that back. And then it is this weird amalgam of a lot of people that do it sort of everybody does it a different way, and even more so because there's so little talent that we have to we use a lot of Swedish talent, obviously not now because Corona and stuff, but I feel like then that's what we say, Scandigrabs, #Scandigrabs, is because it's not so much, we only run in Denmark, our Bodyslam does, but it's still, the goal is to represent Scandinavia, because I feel like the Danish scene is actually stronger than it's ever been, and maybe the strongest in Scandinavia, but I'm biased, obviously. But I feel like it's a very strong scene right now, especially, we just ran 4 shows during the fall, which obviously were very limited in every way imaginable, and one of them was that we could only use local talent. We can only use very local talent from Denmark. Usually we use a lot of Swedish talent because it's just it's an easy it's both an easy import to get because they get on a ferry or they drive across a bridge, and it's also easy heat. It's easy storyline wise because in Denmark nobody likes the Swedes and vice versa. It's just like it's this age-old feud from that just dates back hundreds of years, and it used to be actual war where people were killed, and now it's just like anytime there's a sporting event, it's always that bit more on the line. If it's
just settled in a wrestling ring,
even more so. Except in a wrestling ring, we decide the outcome so we can actually win sometimes.
Yeah, you can put yourself over.
Right. I mean, that's the main thing. I mean, actually, I feel like there's a lot of when like I was on a show for in the US, a radio interview show, and they asked me about wrestling in Denmark. That's weird, and like why is it happening now, and why is it sort of building now? And I said I think it's just like in Mexico they had to find a style that fit that culture. In Japan they found a style that fit that culture, and it's just really difficult to find a way that it works in Denmark. And I think a lot of it is you have to use humor, and you have to sort of have that ironic bend to it a little bit, because so much of that stereotypical, that's everywhere in the world, but that stereotypical thing of it's guys pretending to fight in their underwear and all that is very that's all anybody knows, because it's not even really been that much on TV, and it's very it's just got a bad rep. So even when people come to check us out for the first time, we usually kind of go for it's just get some people in that like to drink beer, and then they go and they think, oh, we're gonna go and watch the phony fighting and just laugh at it, right? Because it's stupid. And then when they leave, usually, not always, but usually they go out and they leave, and they'll come up to us, drink in hand, and go, man, this was so much cooler than I thought it was. So it's like you gotta sort of have this. You can't take it too seriously. You can't take yourself too seriously. And I think that was for a long time. That's why wrestling didn't click in Scandinavia in general, because it took itself seriously with kayfabe and all that. And you can talk about, I mean, there were articles written in 1895 where it was exposed that it's a work.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until maybe in the last 10-15 years where it became more normal to see interviews and stuff where it's dealt with like you would somebody who's an actor who's been in the entertainment industry, and he's now talking about these experiences that he has. And I think that it took a while, but I think that's a healthier way to deal with it. Certainly here it is. I don't know. I mean, it's worked pretty well in the US and Japan and all that. But around here, it's definitely made a difference, and now we don't even get the question anymore, like, is it fake or not? And even 10 years ago, like you'd get that question sometimes from if there was a reporter there to cover it because it was a weird thing happening or whatever. And now it's like that's not even a question anymore. Like nobody's questioning that it's entertainment, but they are questioning, all right, why is this selling out this 400 seat venue? And that's the first step that that's what we're looking to do, is we're looking to get the people in that maybe aren't the biggest wrestling fans already, but they like it live, right? Because it's a live experience, and that's where the magic happens anyway, like to me anyway. Yeah. Like I like to watch wrestling on a screen, but it's just not the same if it's not live.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just rambling. I have no idea what the question was at all.
Dude, just talk away. Talk about whatever you want. But I find it interesting. You saying like, because my question was going to be, what stage is Scandi Grabs at right now? What is it you're you guys are focusing on. And it sounds like you're currently building up your own talent, you're building up the Scandinavian wrestlers, and you're building up that audience that are going to come and watch the shows. That sounds like step one. You need to build up the wrestlers and the fans too. Would you agree with that? Is that the point you're at right now?
I think so. Yes, I think this is where we're starting to, because Bodyslam has existed since 2015. That was when we ran our first show, and it was terrible and it was a disaster. But it should be. I guess it's the first show has to be terrible. But like at that point, there's one other company at that point that's been around since 2005, and they were running maybe 5-6 shows a year, and that's it. And then we came in, and the first couple of years we ran 2 shows a year because like I said, they were terrible. So it's hard to run more shows and make any money on it when it's not that good. But I feel like now we finally, actually in 2019, that was we were at like running pretty much monthly shows, and we had opened up different markets, and we kind of figured out, all right, we can run. Copenhagen is the major market, just because it's the only what you might call a city of 1.5 million people, right? Because it's not a big, like Denmark is not a big market, like 5.6 million people in the entire country, right? So you have to have a different success criteria maybe than you would in the UK or in Germany or in the bigger markets like that. But it also means that it's easier to run the whole country and be sort of a national promotion, if you want to call it that. So that's kind of because there's not a lot of wrestling fans. Like, you can't just run a show every month in the same building and expect, maybe you can expect like 30 people, but you can't expect something that you can make financially viable. But if if it comes to town every once in a while, once a year, twice a year. In Copenhagen, we've kind of figured out 4 times a year we think is the sweet spot, but we'll have to see, because now with COVID and everything, I mean, it's one thing that we can't run any shows now, but then what happens after? There's so many people that have lost their jobs.
Yeah. Who
knows, what the economy is going to look like, and is wrestling going to be something that people are going to want to purchase tickets for, or there's so many long-term things that worry me as a promoter and as a member of society, I guess.
I personally think after whenever that might be, whenever COVID, but the world's back to normal, I do think there's going to be a slight boom period in all forms of entertainment, whether that's theater or sports or wrestling. I feel like people are going to be craving it so much they'll go watch anything. So I really do think we're heading towards maybe a short boom period once this is all over. Fingers crossed. That would be awesome.
I hope so too. And then I think there's happening. There's so little going on right now, and we were fortunate enough that during the fall we were able to run 4 shows. Really, only 3 days. But there was one day where we had 2 shows that we just were barely able, and we were only able to do it because we had some really good partners in the venues that we ran, who we wanted to help, because we want the venues to be there when this is all over, and because they wanted something to keep going. And the dates had already been booked, and already a lot of cancellations, obviously, because there's no bands on tour and all that. So we figured out a way to make it somewhat viable, I guess, for everybody. Yeah. When we ran in Copenhagen, we ran 2 shows. We ran one in the afternoon and then one in the evening. And what we had so limited capacity, like 100 people, 120 people, and usually we can sell out 400 people in that building, but the people that came kind of seemed to be a weird mix of, the hardcores, like the ones like you talked about, the ones that are just starved for wrestling, like they want to go see wrestling. So maybe they came to both shows, or I'm sorry, or they just like they were there to create the atmosphere of 400 people, but there was only 100 people there. But then there were also these other people that I thought was very interesting, where they didn't look like they fit in at all.
Mhm.
And I think that's what you're talking about with, after the boom period, like they were just starved because there's not a lot going on, so they were just like this weird wrestling thing. Usually maybe they wouldn't give it a shot, like they wouldn't bother because there's a lot of other options.
Yeah,
but they did, and hopefully they enjoyed it. I mean,
they just want something, don't they? Anything.
Yeah.
They just want to go see something entertaining.
And I think that's going to be interesting if we can, because again, a lot of our demographic is not the guys in the Bullet Club shirts. It's just the people that want to go out, have fun, shout at people, and drink beer.
Yeah.
And I think that's again, I think when things open back up, there's going to be that window that you're talking about, where there's maybe going to be some room for growth for, if you're there for it,
Yeah, and I think
we'll have to see.
Yeah, it's important in that case right now to be ready for that. Whether you're a wrestler or a promoter in this time during COVID, making sure you're doing everything possible to stay relevant and in the public eye, so that when everything is back to normal, you're ready to go straight away. Because I think the worst thing to do right now would be to take time off and not do anything, because you want to be ready for when it is back to normal. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be, everyone's going to be craving it. So right now, the best thing you can do is stay relevant. And that's the interesting thing, is we found out about you during COVID. So you're obviously doing something right. We're in the UK and we found out about Bodyslam. So whatever you're doing, keep doing it.
I mean, it's actually interesting because we got into contact via Twitter, and I personally, like, I know there's a lot of you can find some terrible threads, and some you can go into some weird subcultures and some bad stuff on Twitter and on wrestling Twitter. But I enjoy Twitter a lot, maybe because I'm still kind of new to it, because it's not really, like, it's never really taken off in Denmark as a platform. Like, it's like everybody's on Facebook, everybody's on Instagram. Twitter never really took off, so it's something that we didn't really spend that much time on it until honestly probably until last year, and that was pretty much just because we figured, all we're going to do, like, we're not going to sell any tickets on this. This is solely for, it's kind of, if you bring in Chuck Mambo, we can, tag Chuck Mambo in something. Maybe he'll retweet it, and it's like it's for a different. It's not for the audience that makes us our money generally.
Yeah,
but at the point.
Question. Sorry, go carry on. Sorry, all right.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that was what I was going to ask you. Actually, you mentioned, I was like, Chuck Mambo. You've had Chris Brooks, Speedball, Mike Bailey. How important has it been for you to bring these guys in?
I feel like it's been absolutely crucial. There's, like I said, what we're going for is we want to build up the local talent, and generally we'll also a guy, Michael Finn, is probably the guy that sort of has been the face for a good while, who's also faced not all, but a lot of the imports, and established himself to the audience as, he's on that level. And I think that's one of the it's more than one thing, though. That there's the strict kayfabe storyline thing of these Danish guys are as good as or better than these indie guys that are famous on Twitter. But again, most people generally, like, we had Speedball Mike Bailey come over, just as an example, and he's a big name. But when he came out, it was like everybody was like, "Oh, it's Karate Kid" or whatever. And then of course he blew everybody's minds, right? Because he's unbelievable. But like nobody bought a ticket to see Mike Bailey. They bought a ticket for the brand of Bodyslam. They bought a ticket maybe for one or two of our more colorful characters, but they didn't buy it to see the imports. But then when they did see it, that's, it's like it blows your mind when you see Speedball Mike Bailey do his stuff, and you didn't even maybe you even came in thinking, oh, there's going to be they're going to stomp the ground and they're going to be a mile away with their fists when they pretend to hit each other, and then Mike Bailey comes out, right? But also we had the Mike Bailey versus Lucky Kid on the show just before everything shut down, I think. Or maybe that was October of last year. But anyway, we had Lucky Kid versus Mike Bailey, and it was an unbelievable match. It was the match of the year. But then we had a main event after that with two Danish guys in it.
Yeah.
And because nobody knew Mike Bailey, like they were all blown away by the stuff that they did. But as most people that, when you start watching wrestling, you remember that maybe it's not about the work rate so much for you. Maybe it's that guy that comes out and he's on the microphone and he's saying stuff. And then, I don't like him. I want him to get beat up by this other guy. Like the simpler things. And then it's, then you can use, all right, well, maybe Peter Alexander, who's our champion, who was in the main event, who had to follow Speedball Mike Bailey versus Lucky Kid. And he was not, he was not confident about that. Like neither one of the guys were. But I was like, you got to understand, like, this is like, you're not going to have a better match, but that's not the goal here. The goal is you got to have a different match. And you got to give them something else. Yeah. And that's what happens when you speak Danish. Then you can use that to rile up the crowd and and maybe even you can bring them down a little bit after you saw all the crazy stuff. Then you come out and you go, you guys are, you suck, or, whatever. I don't remember what he said, but like you can do this thing of, all right, I'm going to get my character over now to the point where you care about what I do. And then the other guy comes out and then you care about that in a different way. Like we start at a different point. And by the end of that match, people were reacting to it like they started out slow, because you'd have to start out slow after a speedball match if you want to have any chance whatsoever. But but by the end of it, people were super into it, and they were super pissed when Peter Alexander won the match. And it's a variety thing.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what I was going to say. Wrestling's a variety show. Like
it's easy to just go, all right, like we're going to put the match that we think is going to be the worst match first, and then the second worst, and then the third worst, and then the best match is just going to be last. But that's not necessarily how the audience sees it, because they don't know wrestling, especially in Denmark. They don't know wrestling. So that's something that we've had to learn the hard way, that it's not always just put the two best wrestlers in the ring. And that's also something when we have any imports in, they add something that the Danes can't do, generally speaking. Sometimes it's, it depends on what kind of import it is, because sometimes there's, the colorful characters from Finland or from Sweden, that, where there's no name value to it, and there's no maybe, exceptional work rate or Twitter anything, but they then add something, a quality to the show anyway. But like a Chuck Mambo or a Chris Brooks or anybody like that, they add the that you guys see it. Guys like the people that follow the British wrestling scene, and we've had a guy, Toby. Shout out to Toby from Berlin, who flew into Copenhagen to watch his show, and we met him again down in at the 16 Carat weekend. He's just super nice guy, but like he found out about us because he really enjoys TK Cooper and Chuck Mambo. But then he came in and he watched the whole show, and then he was like, this is really cool. And Berlin, like a Berlin Copenhagen plane ticket is like super cheap. And they leave all the time. So it was an easy thing for him to sort of, all right, then I'll go and I'll tick that off on the bucket list. I saw wrestling in Denmark, but still, it's like it's different eyes to the same product, and then you guys see it, and it's like, even though a Chuck Mambo is not actually now people really like the crowds, like he's been here now, so he's gotten over. Maybe I shouldn't say that. He's not over at all, and I shouldn't pay him more at all, and he has no leverage over me. But he's
just to tell you, you've got him on next week, so I'll be telling him all this.
Oh no. He's but no, he's so nice. He would never hold me up for money, I don't think. Maybe TK would. I don't know. But he's but anyway, it's like it's different. It's different eyes on the product, and that's because on one hand, obviously the most important thing is always going to be enhancing the image of wrestling in Denmark and in Scandinavia, but it's also going to be necessarily, I think, at some point, enhancing the image of Scandinavian wrestling outside of Scandinavia.
Yeah.
And I think that's the harder trick to do, really, because it's one thing to run show, like we feel like we're doing pretty well generally. Yeah. Like, it's not like, I'm not making a living off of it or anything. And again, because the market is so small, it's not necessarily the goal, but the goal is definitely to, first off, if you think of Scandinavian wrestling, we want you to think of Bodyslam. And part of that is just, for a while there was this, I know especially in Germany, in northern Germany, there was this probably well-earned reputation of it's just a bunch of backyarders in Denmark, because it kind of was. And then you can talk about, all right, is that a constructive attitude to have? Like, should you just be like, oh, that's shit, or should you try to help them out, or and make them, and there's different ways to look at that. And I'm not going to say that there weren't probably some obnoxious people that didn't want to learn and they want to listen, but the point here is, we don't want to be like that. We want to be the positive example of, wrestling in Scandinavia is at the very least better than you might think. That was sort of the goal, right? Like, because when you hear it, you're probably gonna think that's some guys in t-shirts in front of 20 people, and it's gonna be terrible, and so we want it to be, at least, so when people see it, they're like, this is maybe not high level indie wrestling, Dragon Gate, whatever, but it is like, this is perfectly serviceable. This is, this would not look out of place in the UK. This would not look out of place in Germany. This would, that was sort of the goal, of sort of heightening it at least to that level. And of course, we can talk about the different ways that you can do that. But I feel like, to me, the strongest way to do it is not necessarily going to Germany. Like, that was a great experience. Don't get me wrong, absolutely was. But I feel like the best way to do it is to do it at home, and to do, to put on good shows, and then have these imports that come in, and like, I was just recently, I was thinking about, we had a guy from, on the very first show, we had Chris Ridgway. I think you know him.
Yeah. Chris Ridgway.
Yeah.
He was on our very first, like the first 3 shows, and he did a seminar on one of the shows. And I just recently was thinking about that, and I was like, why don't we do that at every show? Like, why don't we try to do that? And it's, of course, it's a headache because you got to set the ring up earlier, and you got to, get to the building earlier. Maybe you have to pay more and rent in the building, because it has to be in the building on the day of the show. Yeah. But like, we kind of got away from that a little bit, and I feel like that was a good habit to be in. So that's another another sidebar to what can the Brits teach us is also just straight up teach us stuff like at a seminar, because there are so many different schools of thought on wrestling, and generally in Denmark what you get is very very much the American style that my like my promotion or me and my brother's promotion, I should say, otherwise I'll get heat. But but me and my brother's promotion, it's the American style, because that's Emeritus was trained in the US. He went to an American wrestling school, so that's the basis. That's what he teaches from, and he's been to seminars with all kinds of different people. But that's just always going to be his base. So if you have somebody from a different school of thought and a different philosophy on it, that's a different, that's very valuable. Again, because it's so easy. The less, what is it? If a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, right? So this thing of, a lot of people will tell you that there's one right way. And that's something that I always felt was very dangerous in wrestling, because then what if you work with somebody who's, like even just somebody from Mexico, he's going to work on the right side, right? And he's going to be really good, but he's going to, and you're going to be confused if you think, oh, there's the one true way. And a lot of times it's just, there's always, like, everybody thinks Ricky Steamboat does these great arm drags, but nobody does Ricky Steamboat arm drags. Like, they all do the one where they hook the arm, but he doesn't actually ever hook the arm. Like, if you look at it, and that's just, it's one of those things where nobody excels at the same thing. So you got to find, all right, what works for me, what works for you. Maybe it's not the same thing, but it's still, it pays to be familiar with it, and to be open-minded enough to know all these different ways to do it, to do the same thing. Because generally in Scandinavia, we look at it like we're Memphis in the 70s and 80s. Like, we don't have the greatest workers in the world, so we have to be more more colorful, and the presentation matters more. And I feel like actually it's kind of a bad rep that Memphis has in a way. Like, they had some terrible stuff, and some terrible wrestling. They had some really good wrestlers. Like, you can say a lot about Jerry Lawler, but he had some really good matches that were just mainly him punching guys.
Yeah.
Because he just figured out, this is what works here, and this is what works for me. And I feel like we're getting there. We're not at all there yet. But I feel like we're kind of, there's becoming a style, like, this is kind of coming together a little bit, that works from all these different influences, and what works for our crowds, because our crowds, like, generally dives won't do much of anything. Like, if you do a moonsault outside of the ring, people think it's crazy, but like, generally dives don't do much, and people still do them because they see them on TV. But, like, that doesn't really work that well. Submissions are kind of hard to use, and you're kind of learning, all right, so how do we do a submission where people care about it? How do you do a dive so that people know what's going on? Because a part of it is just that they don't know that if I'm standing with my back to these ropes and there's a guy on the other side, I'm gonna run at him and I'm gonna jump out. Like, they don't know that's happening. So they don't get it until you're actually jumping, and then it's just, what happened? What's going on? And the same thing I think happens sometimes with submissions. Like, they don't know necessarily that I'm looking for a hand tapping now. Like, they just like, oh, he's hurting the guy, but they don't know what am I looking for here. So generally the old school, where you if you put a guy in a sleeper and you hold his arm up and it drops once and it drops twice, like, they get that. That's visual enough to where, all right, everybody understands if it drops the last time. And of course, it never drops the last time.
It's like you're having to teach the crowd, isn't it? A little bit, like you're having to teach them what to look out for. Like, if he picks up the hand, it's a submission. And because these like you said, the quite maybe old school people, they might not fully understand pro wrestling. So you're having to teach them a little bit about what it is and how it works.
Right. And and that's very interesting too, because so much, like, all the wrestlers are the biggest wrestling fans. So they have to adapt to this mentality that I'm sure everybody, when they watch wrestling in the beginning, like, they didn't know that stuff either, but then they forget because they get so used to it. And even just like an Irish whip is ridiculous, right? But you just get used to it.
There's so much in wrestling which is ridiculous and shouldn't work, but we as wrestling fans, we don't care because it's wrestling. Right. But to somebody who might not be a wrestling fan, they're like, what? Why is he doing that?
Right. I mean, it's just this. You have to understand the genre a little bit, but that's what we're kind of forced to is kind of look at it from the outside perspective. I think a lot of times, and still, a lot of the basic old school pro wrestling angles and stuff like that still works. Like, we did an angle where it's a guy got his face put in a cake, and that still works. And we've had this slow burn on the lackey who's treated poorly by the heel, and then he finally has enough, right? And that's people still, like, they eat it up. So, like, and that's like so pro wrestling. But it's also just
Man and Virgil.
But I mean, it just works. It just works on like a basic storytelling level.
Yep.
And we just think of it as a pro wrestling-y thing.
Yeah.
But it's really not. Like, it's not. It's just it's Cain and Abel or
absolutely. It's a human story, isn't it? Everybody can relate to it.
Right. Everybody's like, man, if anybody talked to me like that, I'd just slap that guy. And then they really want that guy who's in the ring, who's actually being talked to do it. And then when he doesn't do it the first time, they're like, the next time it happens, oh, I hope he does it this time.
Yeah.
And but again, it's all storytelling. It's all, it's physical theater, all that, more so than it is, we can't relate, or we can't rely, I should say, so much on the wrestling, just this is good wrestling stuff, which is a gift and a curse, because there's a lot of promotions all over that have done well just by, Pro Wrestling Guerrilla is probably the one that you think about if it's it's good matches. It's really great wrestling. It's like, if you want to watch great wrestling, you cannot go wrong. And NXT maybe in the beginning also had that, that vibe going of, this is just really good wrestling. And it would be, it would be easier on some levels if we could do that, but we can't, the audience isn't there for it. But maybe, in a few years, maybe it will be. But that also depends on how we, how we present wrestling and how they, that's how they think about wrestling. So yeah, we'll, it's just like a constant experiment. It's like, that's so much part of the fun to me about wrestling is the, like, it's a creative outlet.
Yeah.
For me as a promoter, like, and I don't even generally, I don't tell people how to wrestle at all, because it's just, I feel like so awkward anytime I've tried to do it, if it's because it's like this better than I do. You know what I mean? Like, I can tell you where on the card it is, and I can, I'll give some pointers and stuff to, all right, we next show it's like this, and like, this is the overarching thing, and we're building to this and all that. But I always feel the best results come from the collaborative effort, where maybe I'm more of a facilitator on, you go out and do what you're really good at, and I will, do what I'm really good at, which on a international scale is not much. But like in Denmark, we're doing all right. So that's, that's what I feel like too when I see somebody like like a Chuck Mambo or somebody. It's like, he's always just he comes to Denmark and he could just not care.
Yeah.
Chris Brooks, he could just come to Denmark and just not care, or a Mike Bailey or whatever, and they never do. And that makes me work harder too. Like that they care about. Maybe they don't care about my per se. Maybe they don't care about the Danish fans or whatever. Like if they cut a promo, I'm sure they would. But they care about, like, they respect their craft enough to where they know. Also, maybe because of YouTube and all that, like, even though this match is happening in Denmark, you never know who's going to watch it. But they don't want to. They put an effort in, and they take pride in what they do.
Yep.
And that makes me want to take pride in what I do.
Yeah.
Do it to the best of my ability, whatever that may be.
Well,
and like you said earlier, I feel like it's very important to sort of stay relevant in some way, and I think a part of that is doing stuff like this, being able to go on podcasts and getting the word out about, there's actually wrestling in Denmark. Because maybe you watch this and maybe you won't go and check out a show, even though you can watch shows for free on YouTube that we just put out, even though you can watch this on IWTV with the code Bodyslammers, you get 5 days free.
I'll put it in the description and on the screen. Definitely check it out.
I was going to ask you, actually, I mean, how important has that been, the IWTV deal?
I think IWTV and WXW now were very instrumental. Not so much to the Danish audience that we have, but to the international audience. I feel like it's been a huge thing.
Yeah.
Because it's just, now it's accessible, and that's the biggest thing for, we are super isolated over here, because it's I mean, this is not it's like 2-hour flight, you're in London, right? So it's not like isolated in that way, but it's not a lot of eyes on here. But if it's on IWTV, if it's on WXW's service, if it's on the High Spots Wrestling Network, all those different outlets, even if if 10 people watch that, then that's 10 people that really care about independent wrestling, and that means they know a lot of other people that also care about independent wrestling. And I feel like it's been a big word of mouth thing for us. That is, especially, I actually think WXW now was probably the biggest, just because it's so it's a big market, it's very close to us geographically in Germany. So I feel like that made a big difference. Like that was when we were on WXW now and IWTV, and the first 3 shows were on there, I think, or something like that. That's when there were some people that just kind of reached out to us from Portugal. I think somebody wanted to buy a ticket from Portugal, right, and Germany and stuff like that. And it's like, that would have never happened if it hadn't been for, maybe it wasn't even, the guy from Portugal came up. Maybe he didn't even see us on those platforms. Maybe one of his buddies did, and he's like, "Do you see that thing? I'm gonna be in Denmark anyway. Maybe I'll check it out." Or it's like, it's this huge community that still, I think we're about as obscure as you're going to be. But now there's there's an inkling of something, awareness about, there's wrestling in Denmark, there's wrestling in Scandinavia. What did you hear about the Bodyslam thing? Oh, there were in WXW Germany. There's a little bit of something there that makes, as small as they are, a little bit, what's it called? I'm drawing a blank. But like when you throw a pebble in a lake, and there's
makes ripples.
Ripples.
There's
ripples in the
ripple effect.
Yes, in the international wrestling community, as small as it is, there's actually a little bit of a ripple effect, and that's the biggest thing. I think a few people have told us about, they watched the shows on WXW now, again, because Denmark's close to Germany, so WXW is, is the big, that's the big promotion. So if you're a hardcore indie wrestling fan in Denmark, you probably follow WXW, probably follow, Progress maybe.
Yeah.
And being on that service meant that there were some people that just checked it out because, all right, maybe Danish wrestling isn't so bad. And that's another thing, actually, that with the hardcores, the ones that watch a lot of wrestling, that's almost hard to convince them that Danish wrestling is worth following, just because, again, because they know that it used to be some guys in t-shirts and sneakers, and it wasn't very good. So they're like, oh, I gave it a chance 10 years ago, and it was crap. I'm not gonna watch that again. There was actually a guy when we ran a show at a venue who was like a sound tech, and he was there all day, and we were just, we're gonna this light over here and this sound, and he's gonna, he helps us out with different stuff, and then the show happens and the show's over and we're tearing everything down, and then he comes over and he's like, I'm actually a pretty big wrestling fan. I saw a different show in this venue like 5 years ago, but this was actually pretty good. He's like, he just wanted to see, how bad is this going to be before he comes out of the closet as a closet wrestling fan.
Yeah.
But that was a very positive experience, because that's what we want, right? We want to give the local people something to be proud about, like something where they can point to say, this is my promotion, this is my hometown or home country promotion, and you should check this match out because it's actually
that's what happened in the UK. That's one of the reasons our scene grew so big, is we didn't have to travel to London anymore to watch wrestling. We didn't have to go, travel for 5 hours. Every city had their own promotion, and we were proud of our promotions, and we'd go see them every month. And you'd support the wrestlers from your own city, and then you'd get like wrestlers from other cities come down, and they'd be hated. They'd be the heels. If you had a wrestler come from Leeds to Hull, they'd be hated just because they're from Leeds. So, and then you have like this sense of pride for your own promotion, and it sounds like that's what you're getting over there, which is awesome.
I think that's actually what's happening in Sweden as well. If we're going to talk the broader Scandi-Graps situation, there's a promotion in Gothenburg and in Malmö and Stockholm, and they they only run in that particular town, but it's very like the local guys there are like so over. Like it's ridiculous. And if you ever do a podcast with El Generico, I don't know if you can find him somewhere. I heard he's at like a monastery somewhere.
He was running an orphanage at some point.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. He's off Twitter anyway, I think. But but if you can find him, like he did a tour in, I want to say maybe 2013, maybe 2014, and to this day, I'm sure if you could find him, he would let you know that it's the Swedish crowds are insane, and that's because it's this local promotion with these local heroes and these people that have never, they haven't watched wrestling before, so it's like if they see a 450, it's like the craziest thing they've ever seen.
Yeah,
and if they're So when somebody on the level of an El Generico comes in, and he did, I think he was in like all three promotions over the course of a weekend, and just he was like, this is the biggest, the best kept secret in wrestling is the Swedish crowds. The Swedish audiences are just amazing, and he was in Denmark as well, and did not have a good experience. It was not a good show, and it was not. It was in, and he was a heel. Like, why would he?
El Generico, a heel.
Yeah, and it was in front of, I think, 30 people in the gymnasium. But that was actually something when we saw that, we were like, oh man, that's such a missed opportunity, because El Generico, forever is going to talk about how great Sweden is, and he's not going to mention them ever. So we got to find some, like we're looking for that for our El Generico moment.
Don't worry, we'll
find him.
Yeah, we'll find him. We'll track him down. I have some sources that say he actually died in a fire at an orphanage, but then again, somebody last year said that he survived and he's living in Mexico. So maybe we'll find him. Maybe we'll get him on the show and we'll let him know all about Bodyslam Pro Wrestling. Tell him to get there if he can. Who knows?
Please do that. That's he is Mexican, so I mean he would go back to Mexico.
Would make sense.
You would think so. But Kristian, before we wrap it up as well, because obviously we do want to bring you back if that's okay with you, because there's so much more to touch on. But we know you've got other things on. So before we wrap it up, please promote Bodyslam. Pages, anything else?
Well, we already talked about. Find us on IWTV. Use the code Bodyslam for 5 days free if you're a new subscriber. Even if you find out that Bodyslam is not for you, you'll still be able to watch all the craziest indie promotions from all over the world. So it's a great deal regardless. Find us on Facebook, on Twitter. We're Bodyslam Wrestling. We're Body Slammers on Instagram. You can find us on YouTube as well, where we have our last 4 shows absolutely free if you want to check them out in their entirety. And yeah, I mean, I wish I had a somewhere to send you to buy a ticket, but right now, unfortunately not. But hopefully next time, when I'm back, I'll be able to plug my my next show. Hopefully,
you've got a website, haven't you?
We have a website. You can find everything that you need. Bodyslam.dk.
Yeah.
Well, I know for a fact that when the world opens up, me and Callum will be on a plane to Denmark.
I'd love to. It's on my bucket list. I'd love to.
Yeah.
I would love to meet you guys in person, and I will buy you a beer when this is all over.
Yeah, we'll do an in-person interview as well. We'll do in-person interview, and we'll we'll come to the show and everything. That would be amazing.
That would be so much fun.
You had me at beer, so we're there. So we're there, man. But yeah, thank you so much, man. We really appreciate it. We'll get you back on. But for now, Kristian, Bodyslam Pro Wrestling. We are Ringsiders. Thank you very much.